Howdy folks and welcome. I hope this finds you well. Today we'll be talking about The Suffering, a cult classic psychological horror game that still holds up today, but is getting a little bit rough around the edges as time goes on. Development started back in 2002 under the title Unspeakable. Horror games were gaining popularity in the late 90s and early 2000s thanks to titles like Silent Hill and Resident Evil. Hell, even throw in Clive Barker's Undying. Surreal Software Games designer Richard Rouse had an idea for a game and wrote a 2-page plea deal to a studio to get it developed. Quote, "Stylized horror shooter with frenetic gameplay of Devil May Cry meets the horror setting of Resident Evil and the immersive game world of Half-Life." Whoa, those are some big titles there, Richard. But I kind of get the point he was making. Richard was a former developer on a game, Gunslinger, which he thought was overly ambitious with all the moral choices that the player could make. Richard wanted to make a more streamlined approach to the morality system, and I think they did a decent job with it. He and his team were also really heavily influenced by The Shining. You can read an interview where he talks about how he wanted to create a world where you felt tortured, and oh boy, you do.
Inmate, back in your cell. Everything's under control.
I had no expectations coming into The Suffering. Some people in the comments section suggested the game, and surprisingly a couple of my friends also had played the game and highly recommended it. Even though I never played the game, when I saw the cover, I distinctly remember seeing it on some obscure gaming magazine that freaked me out as a kid. This and Condemned's cover art were really horrifying. Anyways, The Suffering isn't your typical horror game, especially when trying to evoke Half-Life and Devil May Cry. There's going to be some interesting gameplay mechanics. Not only that, it's a wild mix of designs as well. There were times where I was genuinely freaked out by the horror aspects the game provided. And then there were times where I couldn't stop laughing because of the oversaturation, to the point of it being a trope or a parody of itself.
You! God damn it, what are the chances? I survived 10 hours out here in this pit of hell, and I had to run into you? The scum who killed his own wife and children? Why, Pendejo? Huh? Why you do it? You going to kill me too? Come on, inmate, kill me, I dare you!
Kill him before he kills you.
Wait, he's just confused.
So it turns out you don't have the cojones to kill me when you have the chance. You fucking inmate. Go to hell, I am done with you.
As you progress through the game, it becomes less that Silent Hill and more Max Payne without bullet time. By the time you get the shotgun, the wheels are off, and you're experiencing something more akin to Die Hard 2 Viva Las Vegas.
Come to scumbag. Nothing personal. All right.
Anyways, you play as Torque. Yes, the thing your car makes. It fits him perfectly.
Inmate, is this true?
Oh, he won't say. Claims he blacked the whole thing out. A likely story. The needle's too good for him. Filthy inmate, they should all die.
Torque, to my knowledge, does not say a word throughout this game, much like the third-person Gordon Freeman. Look, I'm not putting the strings together. They're already there. Torque is accused of an egregious crime that we'll get to in the story bit later. All you need to know now is Torque is sentenced for death and is on this prison island. No, not that one, but there are similarities. Anyways, The Suffering does a great job utilizing its environments to tell gnarly stories, especially with all the history that's happened at Abbott Penitentiary. There were also a lot of thought-provoking moments that I wasn't expecting from this game. With the escalating action and psychological horror being blended into a Guns Akimbo type video game, this is pure 2000s, and it's pretty fun. So let's start with the gameplay. At its core, The Suffering is a third-person shooter. The game wants you to be shooting things, and you get ample ammo. I enjoyed the feeling of the gunplay, even though the mobility felt a little bit off. I guess I'm spoiled with Elden Ring being able to roll forwards and backwards, not just side to side. You do have a decent array of weapons, the shotgun being the best of all of them. Also, my jaw dropped when in close quarters and taking out the limbs of these abominations. This is 2004 and this dismemberment system is top notch. It makes the gameplay and gunplay a lot more visceral. It also goes into the feeling that you're really in a prison. You'll be finding maps just like in Resident Evil, and as you explore, you'll see how big this prison actually is. It was kind of daunting knowing how many places I had yet to explore. Maybe it was because it was my first time, but this was a good feeling, especially in the early levels when the tension was at its highest. I also enjoyed the pacing of the game. You can either have these long fight sequences or go down a derelict hallway with creepy blood spewing off the walls and you have no idea what's on the other side. Sadly, this wasn't always the case in the around 10 to 12 hours of playtime that I got with The Suffering. I'm looking at you, Lighthouse section.
How did
You're
it
the
get
one,
this far?
aren't you? We've been playing for so long. I remember you from my dream.
The Suffering makes a great case for a remaster because I think the only things that held it back are the limitations of the studio or the engine at the time. Scripting comes to mind and companions. You'll meet a lot of people around Abbott Penitentiary, but the pathing can sometimes be finicky.
Jesus, Byron, look what they did.
But I also think the remaster would have to answer a very difficult question. What kind of game is The Suffering? 2000s games were a little bit different than what we have today. It was more free thinking rather than genre defining the game. I don't know if a remaster would be able to capture what The Suffering is and what makes it a really good game. It's hard to balance psychological horror and then have this.
I ain't nothing to fuck with. Bring the ruckus, motherfucker.
Visually, The Suffering does a great job at creating ambiance and atmosphere with creative lighting and level design. Whether you're going down that creepy corridor with a lot of blood or exploring deep underneath the prison, there was always something visually striking in an area. I also enjoyed that the developers added a monster codex to the game. It added a lot of depth to the game that I wasn't expecting. Also, I wasn't expecting to get this much into the Eldritch horror, but I'm with it.
I only briefly saw this enormous creature a single time, near the docks. I cannot even begin to describe him, save for one thing. He seems to be quite literally connected to an inmate.
What I really enjoyed about all these enemies and entities is that they weren't just meant to be over the top. There was a reason why they looked like the way they did. They're all depictions of how people have been murdered or abused on the island throughout 300 plus years. For example, the firing squad or the burrower. Like, these are people that have been taken advantage of or murdered. It's really sad. It made me kind of melancholy thinking that all these people, all these creatures, demonic creatures, call them what you will, were actually people that were just suffering. A side note, the Slayers in this game reminded me so much of BioShock splicers, especially with all the metal that was infused into them, and this game came out 3 years before. interesting. Anyways, the Suffering's visuals shine in close quarters. They knew exactly how they wanted the prison to be perceived. But when you get to the later half of the game in a more open wilderness, it kind of loses its je ne sais quoi.
This way. It's time for us to bust out.
One of the interesting mechanics that I just completely missed, I guess, was the fact that you could go into first person. I only learned about this because I had to Control Alt Delete out of the game, and somehow it unfroze the game, but also brought me into first person. The weird thing is, I could have probably gotten through the game fully in third person. There might have been one area that I could think that you had to switch, but even then, did I miss something by not using first person mode more? Apart from making the game 1,000 times scarier, I mean, it is horrifying being in first person. There was also animations for first person, like the Tommy gun unloading a magazine, and it disappears so quickly, but to put that into the game is really interesting to me. You also play the game differently in first person. There is no dodge roll that you have in third person, so it kind of locks you out of the mobility they wanted. I don't know, what are your thoughts? Also, not being able to see your enemies sneaking up behind you was creepy as hell. No thank Poe! The cool part about that is that you can actually hear your enemies sneaking up on you, and that's a great segue into the sound of the game. You can hear almost everything around you. Something running up the walls, you can hear it. Don't know what's behind the door? Oh, you can hear that. Just make sure you have something stronger than a shiv. The sound in the game elevates the gameplay and overall experience so much. I would highly recommend playing this game at night with a good pair of studio headphones. Even though you can blast your way through a lot of situations, there were moments that terrified me just because of the sound.
They won't leave you alone until you do it.
Guns sound okay, nothing compared to the counterparts of the same year. Voice acting can be hit or miss, but you will recognize some voice actors if you've played games past 2004.
Who's here? Grab and feel.
One of my biggest gripes with the game was actually something visual and auditory. It was these jump scares.
That one.
I know they're trying to make the player question Torque's sanity throughout the game, but this jump scare happens so often that it becomes a parody of itself. I could understand if it was just for scripted moments. You see a lot of crazy stuff. But the game, I kid you not, jump scares you, I want to say every minute. I became so desensitized to it that it actually made me laugh. It's kind of odd because the game can be so subtle about certain aspects and then be so in your face about others. For example, the music. Oh my god, the music. It adds to the identity crisis of this game. There were some pieces that sent shivers down my spine. And then you have songs like you're playing as Master Chief.
Hey, you!
I know this game is a blend of action and horror, but it kind of took me out of the game. I don't know, it had me missing the beginning tone of the game. And speaking of beginnings, let's start with the story. You've been sentenced to death for the alleged murder of your wife and 2 children. Oh yeah, I said egregious. I was not kidding.
Willie's bed isn't even cold yet, and already they brought in a new guy.
I heard he killed his old lady and kids. Sick motherfucker.
Be quiet, you jerry-curled fool. Don't you know who that is?
Why should I?
That's Torque, the man himself. Word is he shaved half the Aryan Brotherhood over at Easton.
So fucking what? I can understand a guy killing his old lady, but he popped his kids too. Motherfucker deserves to be strapped down and dosed.
You believe what the COs tell you, Slick? You don't know shit about the man. I'm telling you, what I heard, he's all right.
Even though they only have circumstantial evidence, you have amnesia. Classic. What I liked about the story is you have no idea if you actually killed your wife and kids or not. It's a great mystery, and the game does a good job at spreading out the details for you to find. Throughout your journey on the island, you'll meet some of its long-term residents. Like Dr. Killjoy, a psychiatrist whose methods were deemed too spiteful for humans, or Hermes, a gaseous ghost that took pleasure in killing people, no matter if they were innocent or guilty.
Finally, you are here. You interest me because you understand how it feels. They needed someone professional to pull the switch. A lot of eager sadists applied, but I was the only one who took the work seriously.
Yeah, we get a vivid picture about the amount of suffering that has happened on this island. Is the story going to blow your mind? No. But side content was so well done that I really enjoyed finding out more about the island than I did about Torque. Side content alone makes the game worth playing. Now for spoiler time, so I plead with you. Get it? Plea? Deal? Whatever. I'll say I enjoyed not knowing anything about the story going into it, and there was enough frights and excitement that will keep you there for at least 10 hours. Okay, here we go. As you progress through the island, there's a bunch of conflicting evidence that you actually committed the crime. On the one hand, Torque is very capable of maiming limbs and killing people, and inflicting massive violence anywhere he goes. On the other hand, he has visions of his wife? Maybe good?
I'm pregnant. And that's not all. Look, it's over, T. You say you're innocent, but I don't know if I can trust you. I'm filing for divorce. You can't be a father in jail. I can't bring Corey here to visit you, or the new one.
Maybe not. I don't know. I felt more like a demon killer than a detective trying to clear my name. You'll soon come to learn that there's an actual demon inside of you, which comes in handy when fighting lots of enemies, but we're going to need to see a psychiatrist.
I can help you, Torque. I can make you well. I can give you control if you really want it. But first, you've got to show me. Come on now. Give it a try for me, won't you?
Blackout sounds like a convenient excuse to me.
I want to see the real you, Torque.
Wanna let go?
That's it, Torque. That's the thing we've been waiting for.
I love how Torque has just no emotional reaction to turning into this Hulk/corpse thing. Halfway through the game, you'll encounter Killjoy at his residence in the old asylum.
Alas, the golden age of radio has passed us by. Who would care to broadcast only on the audio spectrum of human perception when it is the visuals that can truly enrapture an audience?
Throughout the game, he's been testing us to see if we would make an adequate person for a cure. Something I guess he had been working on as a person and as a ghost for hundreds of years. To do this, he talks about this rebirth machine. Instead of curing us, though, it kind of makes us just get Dragon Ball powers.
That's the way you feel about your treatment. I cannot avoid the subject anymore. The time has come for a confrontation, a meeting of the minds, or perhaps I should say a meeting of the mind and the mindless. Go ahead, see if you can't reach out to your deepest fear.
I don't know what that thing was, but Killjoy has made his diagnosis. He's just left it in the prison. Also, I don't know if I should be taking a diagnosis seriously from a ghost that projects himself from 16mm cameras. I'll probably take it with a grain of salt. When we finally find the diagnosis, it's interesting. Killjoy's diagnosis is that we actually don't turn into a monster, but somehow create adrenaline and black out. I don't know. This was kind of interesting because if we don't turn into a monster, are the other monsters real? Did we just murder a ton of people because we are crazy? What's going on with that? Look, I was more intrigued with the side content than if Torque was actually a murderer or not. Regardless of that verdict, throughout playing the game, we've murdered more than 200 people, so I kind of find it null and void if he's guilty of these 3 murders. If the game made killing a little bit more consequential, then I would get it, but I also understand what Richard wanted with the more streamlined morality system. Anyways, we have our classic horror movie storm that stops the Coast Guard from landing. We go to the lighthouse. With the help of Ernesto, an important side character, we get the machinery to start working, and we make our way down to the docks for escape. Whoa, not so fast. 2000's video game final boss incoming. This eldritch horror monster was a shock, since I wasn't expecting to see our character dangling from its umbilical cord. It was like a mix of something from Doom and Evangelion. Well, I guess this is the root of all our problems. With a couple of well-timed fireballs, or whatever the rebirth machine gives us the power to do, we defeat the final boss, and escape the island. There are 3 endings to this game: the good ending, the neutral ending, and the bad ending. Start with the good ending. Torque remembers that he actually didn't kill his wife and children, that someone named the Colonel set him up. You also get this like, oh, your trial is going to get reheard, but I mean, what about the island? Is no one going to be like, Torque, you're the only one that survived this fucking atrocity that happened and over like 1,000, more than 1,000 people, like a whole entire village burns down. I don't know. Anyways, that's the good ending. You might get your trial heard again in this, whatever our justice system is. Now, the neutral ending is probably worse than the bad ending. So I'll do the bad ending. If you chose to execute all the people and listen to your inner demon, then you will kill the Coast Guard, turn into the monster again, and run back into Abbott Elementary, into the island. You'll run back onto the island. Not horrible. It's not bad. It's just Torque is evil, right? Okay, I guess so. I could believe that he killed his family. It was the neutral ending that really messed with me. It's the one that I got, and I assume most people get, since you can save some people really easily, and then other people, it's like, what the hell? So the neutral ending is Torque remembering that he accidentally kills his wife because she wanted a divorce after he went to prison the first time. He, I guess, slaps her down. She hits her head on the coffee table or on the nightstand. His kid comes in, sees the mom dead, kills the brother, and then takes his own life. What the What? How is this the neutral ending? How is that? I mean, just to think about the grief and the horror that anyone would feel over an accident and then the repercussions of that. It made me actually question, holy mother of God, like that's terrifying. Torque has a better excuse for being quiet than Gordon Freeman does. I'll give him that. I don't know if this was a satisfying ending to me, but what was satisfying, and I said it before, is everything this game has to offer. All the little side stuff, all the little quirky mechanics and weird gameplay choices, level designs. It's a classic 2000s game. It's free thinking. It's not just defined by the genre that someone said. The more you learn about the depravity of the island made me more interested in the lore. The game did a really good job at adding depth to the universe, and it really caught my eye. I was intrigued by Killjoy's thoughts on creating an army made out of limbs, or freeing Horace from his internal torture. The true meat of the game is in those experiences, not whether Torque is guilty or not. I just had so much fun putting the pieces together, and I think I came to the wrong conclusions most times. But that's what games are for. At least I think this one is. Unlike games today, The Suffering doesn't care about the Steam reviews or which patch they'll come out with next. This was a vision, and it became tangible, something that I respect more and more as I grow older. There aren't a lot of games that could evoke Half-Life, Devil May Cry, Resident Evil, and get it slightly right. And if you're looking for a horror game you might have missed in the early 2000s, look no further than The Suffering. I highly recommend it.
The time has come to wash the scum from the earth. This is my Armageddon. Lock it down!
Thank you so much to the people that suggested this game in the comments section below. I had so much fun discovering and playing this game. If you have a game that you'd like me to try out, please leave it in the comments section below. Also, I'd love to hear your memories and experiences with The Suffering, if you played it when it first came out, and your thoughts and opinions on the story and the gameplay itself. I truly appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. If you enjoyed it, check out my channel. There's something there for everyone. I make sure of it. And as always, see you next time.